There we go. Okay, we are on. I'm just going to be sharing out to more Facebook pages here. So, John, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about what you're going to be presenting.
Okay. Hi, my name is John Papa. I'm a security professional. I work for Oracle's National Security Group. I'm not here on Oracle's behalf. This is my own project with others. And it's a voting methodology to maintain election integrity. The idea was that, and I'll be presenting a short presentation, then I'll give a demo of the security aspects and some of the processes that are around this methodology. The idea was to get us at a higher level instead of digging into the machine mechanics to deal with the methodology of voting and how to have a methodology that builds in the security that we need and brings back the trust to the voter themselves so that the voter themselves approve their own interpretation, the machine interpretation of their ballot, and it's a paper ballot. So I'll just dive into the presentation. I'm going to go real quick through the presentation. Then I'll give a demonstration. Feel free to ask any questions. I enjoy the questions. Okay, so let me share this page.
Oh, and just before you do that, John, at the end of the presentation, if there's anyone that would like to, especially if you're an election integrity activist, expert, or a candidate, and you would like to actually jump on and ask questions, we can send you the Zoom link and you can join, or you can just post questions on Facebook and we'll get them answered for you. So, okay. All right, go ahead.
Let's do this and let's share. Okay, so here's the presentation. First and foremost, the idea is that this is publicly owned. This is open source hardware and software. There's no since the integrity and the security checks are built in through compartmentalization and a hierarchy of checks, there's no need to be doing security through obscurity or have any kind of proprietary where whatsoever. So it's wide open, 100% publicly owned. I attached onto the begin the MIT open source licensing. I believe that's freely and widely available, and it's a good place to start. It's also compatible with any other licensing further downstream if there's some innovation or something like that. So it should alleviate any concerns. Okay, so the idea overall is to not change the manner in which we're voting too significantly. That would cause problems. So the features of the methodology are voter marked paper ballots, that the voter themselves verify their paper ballot, both the image and its interpretation, is to apply the voting methodology in a compartmentalization for security. This is how we do security today, is we compartmentalize, to provide an efficient way to hand count the paper ballots for election results, and to provide post-election auditing and election ballot recounting. Those are the main features. Dividing up the methodology into three components, and we can discuss about this later. The first is access control, to have a manner and a method to identify or to ensure that voters are unique. We don't have to have ID or anything like that. It could just be an e-ticket rider, a voting voucher. Get it to provide a procedural handling of the ballots for document control. And those practices are very commonplace in secure facilities. And then to standardize the voting process so that we can narrow down and prevent election fraud. So for the first component, the voting voucher, basically the state registration databases, it's readily known have been compromised. There have invalidated. I believe personally we need to repopulate the state voter registration databases. I think also we need to generate a national citizenship and state residency databases so that we have a population base to draw upon Each state then can issue their voting vouchers. Again, this is flexible. The object is to ensure that we have unique voters. I don't believe in the repopulation of the state voter registration databases in doing like a cutover, but more setting up a parallel system so that we repopulate into the new system, and that way we can also have some comparisons between the new and the old to see any anomalies in that manner. The voting registration databases, real simple. There's places of access. This is an overview. It's a county registration voter database, a state registered voter database, and then a national database. This diagram shows some of the interactions between them, showing read-only associations, way the data is populated into the database, how it is carried over from the county to the state, and how it's replicated nationally for data replication and security purposes. So ballot handling. We want to deal with the ballots like a controlled document. So we want to control the ballot distribution and do that by serializing the ballots. Also, it's essential that we maintain voter autonomy. There should be absolutely no way to tie a ballot to a voter. By doing that, I've described some of the ways to do it. We'll have a ballot distribution database so that we know which ballots were distributed. If something goes wrong, you can bring back the ballot and exchange it for a new one, exchange or replace, and we can track all that. That way we don't have a surplus of ballots, and we can narrow down the serialized range of ballots that have been distributed. And then, of course, a strict chain of custody for those ballots, and I'll describe that component next. So the voting process. We want to prevent election fraud. We want paper ballots. So in the voting process, these are the four major steps that are going to take place. So paper ballot marking, handling, and delivery. This is a separate compartment. There's nothing that connects the marking process with the next compartment, getting an immutable ballot image. Also, we want the voter to verify the interpretation, the automated interpretation of their ballot right at the start, and then we want to protect that voter verification through a series of hierarchy of security. One way we're going to do that is to digitally encode the ballot selections that the voter has verified into the ballot image itself, and I'll explain this and I'll be demonstrating this shortly. So again, the thing is that we want everything to be pretty much the same as we're doing now. So right now, you can mark your ballot. You can choose to mark your ballot manually or with assistance. It's the polling place, or you can use a remote process like vote by mail or some other technology or some other similar process. It's the same processes work regardless of the manner of marking the ballot. Optionally, just like we do today, you can mark your ballot with a machine. The machine isn't connected to anything. All it needs to do is put a ballot in and mark it, right? It doesn't think about anything other than making sure when you select that box is marked. So there's no ties to voter registration or to the tabulation or anything else. It's a standalone marking device if someone should so choose to utilize that method of marking their ballot. But remember, they could just mark it by hand with a pen. So the next is ballot handling. The ballot's a controlled document, right? It stays in the possession of the voter until it's properly secured. And that would be, of course, within a locked ballot box. So here's a summary of the marking. And it's basically just showing that we have a race with selections. We create a file. We print that file. It's serialized, handed to a voter. The voter marks it in either by hand or with a machine, and then at the end of this voter marking process, they have in their hand a marked ballot. That's one compartment. Okay, the next is delivery. So in the polling place, that would be a manual delivery, and for delivery, it's done by the voter themselves, and they walk over to a voting station with the marked ballot, and this is going to be where they're going to do their delivery, and that's where the verification will come into place. In a remote voting situation, like vote by mail, all the actions as we described in this process are handled by a proxy with the voter. So the voter's in a remote location, the proxy's at the voting station, and they work together to accomplish all the tasks of verifying, the voter verifying their own ballot. That works. So at the polling place, the voter verification is pretty simple. The voter drops their hand-marked paper ballot into the voting machine, the voting station, and it takes an image of it, and then it does an interpretation, and that interpretation is contained or can be contained within an encoding. So then the voter can compare their physical ballot under the glass in this voting station and the virtual ballot that's created from it. If the voter is going to, or let me go to the remote, it's the same way, except like I said, there's a proxy. So the voter delivers their ballot, the proxy puts it into the voting station, it's displayed, the voter can approve the virtual representation to make sure that's their ballot, and they just do it through a proxy, same process. So this is talking about the preservation. In the voting methodology, there's a voting station, and inside the polling place is a compartment, is a voting server that it's serving all the voting stations. So the voter verified ballot image is copied to the voting server, and then the voting server itself is doing the same interpretation as the voting station. So it'll come up, so there'll be a copy. There's the ballot image on the voting station, and there's a copy of that ballot image on the polling place server, the voting server. So basically there's a handshake between the two to make sure that the interpretation done on the server is the same interpretation that was done on the voting station, and that interpretation would be approved by the voter themselves. So this is how it works in an overview. During the polling period, the voter places their ballot, it drops under glass, an image is made of it, it's interpreted, that image is passed to the polling place server, it's as a copy. So there's an image on the voting station and on the server. The server one is independently with the same software there, and then the voter approves. They can see all three, the physical, the virtual, and the encoded interpretation of their ballot, and they either approve it or reject it. If they reject it, they'll just correct it, and the process repeats. If they approve it, it drops into a locked ballot box. So it goes from the voter's hand through the voting station, is approved by the voter, and is secured in a locked ballot box. The image on the voting station has the encoding within the image. And that same encoding is also on the polling place server. So you have three levels of redundancy: the physical ballot itself in a locked ballot box, the image on the voting station, and then the image on the polling place server. So at this point in the process, the voters validated and approved their paper ballot. So there's a physical, there's an immutable image of that ballot, there's a virtual, and there's an authenticated automated count digital interpretation of the ballot, the voters' ballot selections. So the voting record is in three parts, but the paper ballot, of course, is the primary. The other two are just for security purposes as this goes along, and you'll see. As this is all taking place, the polling place is generating preliminary polling place results. So the polling place tabulations are generated in real time during the polling period. The polling place server total is published locally when the polling period closes. And then the secondary manual summation of all the voting station totals, and that's compared with the voting server total. So you double check before the preliminary results of that polling place are known. At that point in time, the server then makes a copy of all the ballot images on it, and it passes it up to the precinct. The precinct does the same thing. It automatically interprets that ballot image, compares it to the encoding that's on the ballot image with the interpretation that it did. If this is correct and these totals are compared with the polling place, each then polling place is compared with the precinct's total, and then when all of them check in and it all compares good, the precinct has a total. Now you have, at this point, copies of the immutable ballot images at the precinct level on its server, at the polling place on its server, and also on each individual voting station. Now, at this time, when these two are in sync, the ballots can be published publicly. You can have a web page that is published to. It can either happen at the precinct or the county. It could happen at the state level. But these images are all now readily available and should be made public so that there's no public records request or anything like that. It should just be automatic that these are published. So now hand counting the election results. Okay, so basically, ideally, I'd like to have a ballot box to ballot box handling of the ballots. I'd like the ballot box itself to be like a hopper that feeds them in. But at any rate, the ballots are going to pass, the physical ballots now will pass through the voting station a second time. And since the polling place has some number of voting stations to handle the number of voters there, those same voting stations can be used for the hand count. And that way we can process the hand count in a timely manner. And it should roughly take the same amount of time as the polling period itself. Since you have the same number of ballots and the same number of voting stations with officials working each one, we should be able to do it inside the polling period. So the ballot passes through the secure window for the election official. It passes through, an image is generated the same as when the voter did it. That image is then interpreted for an encoding. That encoding is copied up to the server. The same thing happens. It independently interprets that. But now it can compare the voting server, the recount image, with the voter's original validated image that's stored on that server. So you have an additional check during the hand counting process. Come back, everything's in sync. The voting officials looking at it. All the people there can see it on screens, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. I think that's on the next slide. So all the people publicly can see all three, the physical image, the virtual image, and the encoding. And with agreement, the voting official approves that, and then that's counted and tabulated there as part of the hand count. Now, so the ballot image, the paper ballot, the viewing windows are displayed to monitors. Interpretation of the paper ballot in the viewing window is also displayed to the polling place monitors, and the election official validates the ballot's interpretation with everyone watching. And so this is another summary of how they're going to be processing this, as I described. And it's basically the same software, and it's the same mechanism as before. So again, the methodology, the main components are voter-marked paper ballots, voter-verified paper ballot imaging and the interpretation, and then an efficient method of hand-counting election results, and then post-election auditing and post-election recounting. So again, these paper ballots, you can run them through the voting station as many times as you want. You could have the hand count, you could have a recount, you can audit in any degree of granularity, whether you're auditing just one voting station or the whole polling place or the whole precinct. You can audit at any level or any degree. Also, because the voting station is also used not only by the voter but also by the voting official, that there's cost savings there. It's the same machine. Okay, so let me give a demonstration here. Let me stop this share. I went kind of quick, but an overview of how it flows. And now I'm going to demonstrate the flow and some of the security aspects in a more physical, unless there's some questions.
Well, John, I was thinking we might pause just a second and explain a little bit more about why this is so important. I think more and more people are learning that we are, our voting machines are have proprietary software. They're owned by private companies, and therefore the general public really has no way to check and verify whether the results, what if their vote was actually counted. And right. So this is really a way to give the power back to the people. There's no reason that it should be done in the dark that way. And so, yeah, just wanted to
Well,
interject that.
you're absolutely correct. The fact that the software on voting machines is non-subpoenaable is regular. Security through obscurity is an ancient technique, and really we can build in the security through compartmentalization and a hierarchy of checks. That's what these images, as they move and as they're preserved, and the built-in encoding of the interpretation. But the idea is to bring trust back to the voter themselves. Because right now, what we effectively do is we fill out a ballot and then we just drop it, and it starts heading upstream, where somewhere upstream, we're basically trusting somebody else to do the count and handle it properly. And what we want to really do is put the trust in the verification of that interpretation, of that tabulation, at the voters' hands themselves. And then what we do is we just protect that as it goes upstream, and it's the summaries that take place further upstream. So that's the goal, is that, and we don't want to burden the voter too greatly. We want to secure the trust. We don't want to pass the trust on. Also, the voting vendors, they're free to make voting machines and to market their voting machines. The only problem, that's why we're dealing with the methodology, is we want to design the specification so that we know what they're building is exactly going to ensure that election integrity. Right now, it's like competing car manufacturers, right? Just coming out with the fancier car, this or that. But really, when you do it like that, there's too many vectors for compromise, right? If we all these different machines and all these different operating systems and all these different methods, each one individually then would have to be reviewed for vulnerabilities, right? The idea is that if we go to a higher level and demand this methodology, this specification that they're going to build to, that we're taking all those vectors of attack out of the equation. And so also, and really, it's really kind of a simple thing. I mean, this isn't rocket science. We're basically just handling the interpretation of paper. I mean, it would be kind of like imagining that banks and their money counting machines. What if they had degrees of error? I mean, that would be unacceptable. They're not going to have a money counting machine that sometimes there's $1 million, sometimes there's 190,000, right?
Right.
That's complete. So,
and speaking of money, let's talk about how much this system. Or do you want to go into that a little bit about how? I mean, this could be a huge money saver. Also, I mean, currently
this is really a simple solution. It's boiling the machines down. Basically, a printer to print the ballots, a marking device. These are independent. They don't have to be coordinated between them. And then the coordination is the voting station and the voting server. The server is the same at the polling place, at the precinct, at the county, state level. The software is all the same, both on the station and the server. It's very minor. It does the same exact thing everywhere. So, yeah, I mean, the cost savings is huge. And anyways.
Right. So currently we have a handful of voting machine manufacturers, ES&S, Dominion, that are, well, I mean, they're not going to want to give up the big Hava bucks that they're getting for their systems. But do you have anything to add?
If they could secure an election, then we really have no problem here. The problem is that, and what we've learned is that there's antiquated equipment in the field that's used for the most important process in democracy.
The candidate we had on, Ryan Trundle, had a video of a machine that's been around a long time. The push button, I forget which, is that a Hart Civic or something? But whatever, it was one of the machines where you would push the button to select someone and it would jump to the other. So
yeah,
I mean,
all that built-in logic is just more places for things to go wrong. I mean, the only thing the voting station has to do is interpret where you marked on the ballot. It doesn't matter whose name is in slot number 1 or number 2. All it knows is that this ballot was marked in the area for the first candidate in the list, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to build in all this cumbersome logic that looks at all these variables to make decisions or whatever. Really, it's just a very simple function of telling me where I made a mark on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And observing that so that if anyone were to switch out the paper ballot, and I'll demonstrate that, or switch out an image, or try to any kind of shenanigans anywhere along the line, we want the security checks in place to catch that anomaly and then able to isolate it and then correct it. So all those things are built in. So into a quick demonstration of how this works. It's going to be real easy. Okay.
Awesome.
I have some paper ballots that I've made. Okay. Just like anything, I go into the polling place, I hand over my voting voucher, or they have on there, whatever, I'm a voter. Okay, so I'm going to mark my ballot. Okay. I'm going to take this ballot, I'm marking, each ballot is serialized, right? So I know this is the first ballot that they printed, and I'm just going to use the numbers. There's candidate 1 and candidate 2, and then ballot number 1. Okay, so I'm going to mark the ballot. Now what happens is I take this ballot and I drop it into the voting station, right? Like I said, it goes behind the flags. So this ballot drops in there, and then it makes an image of it.
Mm-hmm. Now this
So
is
there's
in
a
the
ballot
clear.
image.
This is in a clear box, so you can see.
No,
Correct.
the clear box is down here, the ballot box.
Okay.
This is a computer.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
This is the voting station itself.
Okay.
So a computer, open source, you drop it in and it does a scan. Okay, and then it interprets. So this is behind glass, does a scan, it creates this, and then it does an interpretation of that ballot image and this encoded field. So this encoded field is saying, hey, the voter marked the first box. The image is saying, hey, there's a mark in the first box. And the physical ballot is saying, hey, there's a mark in the first box. So the voter themselves then is given a display of they see their physical ballot, they see on the monitor the ballot image, and they see on that ballot image that, hey, I've identified that you marked this first ballot. The voter says, yeah, that's good. They approve it. It drops into the ballot box.
So already that's an extra step that isn't there now. Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's the voter verification. Yeah. So they're going to see their ballot that they filled out, see the ballot image, and then they're going to be able to see the interpretation that the machine has made of their selections on that ballot image. Okay. Now, what happens as they're doing that is this ballot image number 1 is serialized. So I know I have ballot 1. I know it went through voting station 1 and I'm in the first polling place. Now this ballot image is copied to the server. So the ballot image is still inside the voting station with its encoding in it. Physical ballot's in the locked ballot box. And then on the voting server, I have a ballot image. I look at that ballot image and interpret that ballot image with the same software that's done on the voting station with this, and then I compare this interpretation with the voting station interpretation that was approved by the voter. All these things are great. There's a green light. If there's any kind of anomaly on the way, then we just go back and fix it. We either take the physical ballot or we can review and the voter can correct the situation, even if they have to fill out a new ballot. Maybe they didn't make their mark dark enough, any number of things, but they can fix it. The same thing. So now we're going to go to the second ballot. This time, this voter chooses number 2. Right? Same process. They drop it into the voting station. Automated interpretation of the ballot is done. Ballot image is generated. This one with its interpretation. It has the serial number. Ballot number 2 from voting station 1 in precinct or in polling place number 1. Then that's copied to the server. Server gets that second ballot image, does an interpretation of it, creates the encoding, matches this encoding and
Right.
with the original on the voting station. Everything's in sync. The coding's in sync. The images are in sync. Then the voter approves that and says that's good.
Hmm. Why didn't they build these this way in the first place?
Well, I think, what they were really going for was convenience.
Mhm.
That's where we went wrong, is that we wanted to make it more convenient to vote. And at the time, I don't think security was really, I don't know why. But anyways, that one drops. Okay, so that's the second one.
Mhm.
It dropped locked ballot box and it's preserved in there. The ballot box is having a little kind of problem. But anyways, third.
But that will be the clear box where you can see everything. Yeah. Okay.
But it will be locked. You can't get
Right.
into it. Because that's what the Secretary of States were complaining, was they didn't want to touch the ballots because they thought they'd be held responsible for it.
Mm.
So handle this so that there's minimum access to the, except when, the physical ballot has to be used. Okay. Ballot number 3. I'm going to mark that one. Again, the same process, drops into the voting station. Oops. Drops into the voting station. An interpretation is done. A scan is provided. Ballot 3. Voting station 1, precinct 1.
Yep.
That encoding matches the encoding that the voter approved. That image matches the image on the voting station. And then the voter sees that all those things match, gives it a green light. And then it drops, once the green light drops into the ballot box. Okay, so now we have 3 ballots in the ballot box, right? They're preserved. We have 3 images on the server, on the station, the voting station, and of the same 3 images on the voting server. All approved. Each image has the encoding built into it. Okay, so you probably wanted me to talk to you about like image security. So,
yeah, well, I just want to point out already we have the voter has this confidence now where they've double checked things and they can see their ballot actually go into this clear box. So it's, I think it's
yeah, their ballot is preserved in 2 separate locations.
Yeah.
Station in front of them,
Mhm.
but this server that's in a separate compartment within the compartment. Let's say a locked server closet or something like that. There'll be another compartment within, so there's no access. These are communicating over a one-to-one relationship, a secure line, right? No DHCP or any kind of protocols on it where anyone can plug in. It's a one-to-one relationship. No other machines can tap into that network.
No cellular modems in this.
That's got to be the funniest thing I ever heard. A cellular modem in a voting machine.
Yeah.
Why don't you just hand out blank ballots while you're done? Anyways, okay, so now we get to the end of the polling period, right? Now, there's multiple stations. This server has images from all the stations, and they're all serialized. So the station knows its count, right? This station processed 2 votes for number 1, 1 vote for number 2, and there was a total of 3 ballots, right? So the station knows that. Oh, here it is. The server. Okay, the server also knows, and that it counted 2 votes for number 1, 1 vote for number 2, and 3 ballots processed. Now, it might have had another station. Let's say there's another station out there, and it had the same thing, right? So it had 2 votes, so 1 for number 2, and it processed 3. So now, this one reports, hey, I processed 3 votes, and this is the total. The server knows all its totals, so it just goes and checks its totals with everyone just for a double check at the end. Make sure nothing during the polling period, everything's good. Okay, great. Now what the server does is it knows preliminary results, but these aren't the final results. The final results come from the paper ballots in the hand.
Right. Okay.
Preliminary result.
That's very important for everybody to understand that the ballot images, this does not replace anything. It's just a secondary thing. We're still counting paper ballots, right? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to do the paper ballot count next. Okay, so now everything's preserved, right? And now we're going to do the paper ballot count. So, again, it knows its totals like that. Okay, so now we come back through, and the voting official goes, and they get the ballot box, and they're going to slide these things through. Sorry, I lost my total.
I think if you just paint some happy trees on your board there as we go along. Just kidding.
So now it's hand count time, right? So they feed the first one through. It creates an image. This time, it's not going to be the blue images, but the green images. So it goes through, it does a scan, it does a interpretation. So as you pick that one right there, the hand count scan, there's ballot 10011, has the encoding of its interpretation, has the physical ballot there. Now it can match this one with the voter's original ballot image and make sure these encodings are the same. They're both pointing to the same official. So now the hand count official sees that this matches this and this matches the one on the it does it the same thing as before. It passes it up to the server during the hand, and the server now. So it doesn't matter which station you process them through. The server has images of all the ballots. So really, these green ones are also being compared up there. Make sure the encoding matches there with the voter's original. Make sure this encoding matches this one, and then the voting official will press the green, and that one will be tallied.
Now, will there be one, as a non-IT person, I'm going to ask this question. There will be one server per polling place, or how will that work?
You would basically build it to handle the logistics of the number of expected voters, right?
Okay.
Yeah, one server, typically, I would imagine, per polling place would be.
Because I think that's some of where the distrust comes in, that, things are then sent elsewhere and it's not all contained there. So, okay.
No, everything stays within the polling place. The physical ballots, so you can redo all this. Just until this polling place, the hand count agrees with the preliminary results.
Right.
When that takes place, okay, so now on this voting station, you have all the images that were originally validated by the voter. You have all the images that were generated during the recount. All those things are also on the server. Now let's say everything's in sync. The preliminary results match the hand count results, or there might be some ballots on the side. Let's say someone spilled coffee on a ballot. It's on the side, and you can compensate now for those deltas, right? But you have complete agreement within the polling place. Now these images, these ones stay in the ballot box, right? They go through the station and they're always in the ballot box. They're always preserved. You can't get out. So now everything at the polling place is known as in sync. So now what the server does is it takes its images and it makes a copy. So I've got these 3 ballots. I know my ballot number, I know the machine that pulled it, and I know the polling place. And I pass this up to the precinct. I make copy. So these are still on the server. So the server has not only all the original voter validated ballot images and their encoding, but they also have all the hand recount ballot images and their encoding. I forgot the encoding on those ones. And then passed up now to the precinct. I pass a copy, and the precinct does the same thing again, right? They get all these images, they scan, they have them already scanned. They interpret them, they create an encoding, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can track now that encoding back to if there's a difference between this encoding and the encoding in the precinct, I can immediately track that back to that ballot and track down whatever's the anomaly. Well, let's say everything goes good, and up in the precinct. So now up in the precinct, they do their count, and they come up with a count the same as what happened down in the polling place. And now we compare. The precinct asked the polling place, and that was that slide where I was showing basically the handshake between them.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, they say, hey, I got 2 for 1, 1 for 2, and I counted 3 total.
Mm-hmm.
He says, yeah, that's exactly what I have. Now the polling place says that's exactly what I have. Now up in the precinct, I have an exact representation there of what happened in the polling place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The precinct counts up all the polling places. It does that handshake with each one. Now, when everyone agrees, I can now release the preliminary results, right? Because we're all in agreement. The hand count is the real results, and it's known locally. But so basically, I have a complete handshake. Now, you could do that again. The precinct could pass its ballot images up to the county, and the county could run through the same.
Right.
So the county does the same scan. It knows where it came from. We just continue the serialization.
Mm-hmm.
The county says, hey, this is the result I got. What's your result? Yeah, we're the same. So now the county verifies all the precincts.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you do the same thing. The county could pass all its images up to the state. Now, all this can happen after we already know basically the election results.
Mm-hmm.
There's more and more layers of passing on, but somewhere all these things are going to be displayed online. But anyways, the hierarchy of checks. But you'll notice it all comes back to the polling place, and the place is all based upon the physical ballots. Everything else is just a check. So if any kind of anomaly anywhere in the system, I can track it all the way back down, all the way to the voting station that processed that physical ballot. Or if I have to, I can dig into, since each ballot box is associated with a voting station, I could say, hey, this station, this ballot, I dig in the ballot box and I could figure out, oh my gosh, we squished a cockroach and threw out the count. Let's fix it, right? And fix it all the way up. So it's a hierarchy of security. It's compartmentalization. This compartment, polling place, that compartment, the precinct, that bigger compartment. So there's a hierarchy of checks.
Right.
Basically, that's how it works. Okay, so now let's build in some anomalies.
All right. Yes, what could someone try to do, or what might accidentally happen? I guess we should do that.
So, anyways, let's say, I can't wait until we demonstrate this on real machines. Soon. But anyway, okay. Let's say somebody very clever sneaks in and replaces ballot 1 with a different one.
Okay.
And it's even, the physical ballot doesn't have any coding in it. And they slide it in. And then they get rid of that. So what happens in the recount? We run these through, right, the station. It makes an image. Now, this ballot might not be rolling through the same station, but it makes an image on the station and sends that up to the server. The server now has this image of the altered ballot on it. And it compares the hand count ballot image with the original voter verified ballot image that it has stored. Oh, wait a minute, right? There's an anomaly. There's a difference. The original voter verified ballot image on the server shows ballot 1. This is the voter approved one. Ballot 1 from that voting station has got the other one.
Right.
Okay. how am I going to correct this? Well, I've got the original on the station, right? And if this ballot, this false ballot is counted on a different station, I can go back to the original station because I have it marked, it's serialized on the ballot, and I can fish out that original voter verified image. I've got the image on the server, I've got the same voter verified image on the station, and I've got this paper ballot that's different. Something happened, right?
Right.
Be highly unlikely for somebody to be able to, let's say, hack the station, right? Replace the image there with the encoding, the new encoding, hack the server and replace it there, right? There are two separate compartments. It's just not, and plus we're working in real time. It's just not possible. That's that. Okay, but let's say, let's put this back. Ballot one, we're going to put it back. Let's say someone replaces the image, right?
Right.
We can do this in either spot. Let's say
that seems to be the concern most of the time, that ballot images will be altered. So
yeah. So okay. So here's a replacement. I'm not very organized here. Here's the original that we counted with the encoding. Let's say someone very clever comes up with a complete duplicate. All the image checkzones, everything, everything. It's the most perfect hack in the world. And they replace the original with this false one. Okay, now that's on the voting station. Put it on the server. So that's on the voting station now, right? So we come through, we've got our paper ballots in the lockbox. We run them through a station. It does an image on that station. If it's a new one, right, it passes it up to the server. Let's say they hack on the server and replace that image. Now we have a problem because the hand count image doesn't match the hacked image.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So something's wrong, but we've got the physical ballot and we've got the original voter approved ballot, either on the server or on the station. We can track them down, figure out which one got replaced, and we can determine what the original voter intent was. So because there's three checks, there's two locations, and then each one of those locations has a redundancy, not only the image itself, but the encoding within that image. And the encoding most likely will be a calculation that won't easily be hacked. It's not as easy as the arrow in my demonstration, right? It's going to be a digital encoding in that image. So you have to worry about the checksums of the images. You can't change a bit, right? That checksum also includes the encoding because the is built into the image. So you can't change the encoding, you can't change the image. The checksums catch that. The encoding verifies the image, right? Those have to agree. The image verifies the encoding. So it's absolutely impossible to change this results because it's the security on it's so redundant. And again, it's all the voter themselves established all this security by validating their own ballot in this manner.
Right.
After that, but it's going to happen in real time, right? As soon as I can, I'm going to, after the polling period closes, like it said in the presentation, I announce the preliminary results. I do the hand count, and then I can announce the polling place election results, right? It's all in sync with the precinct. When the precinct has all it's done, it can announce the preliminary precinct results when it receives them all, and then when it verifies with all the polling places, it can announce the precinct results all the way up the chain to the state.
Right.
So because all this is happening in real time and it's being checked on each layer as it builds, there's just no time to get in and change it without it being apparent. It'll cause anomalies.
Right.
So again, the whole idea is that to bring the trust back to the voter verified, and Then everything after that is just to maintain security, build enough checks that we can detect anomalies and then correct them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the whole point of the methodology. And all we do is we tell the vendors, this is how we want you to build.
Mm-hmm.
It has to do is this, right?
Right.
They build it, and the one that builds it the cheapest, they're going to make the most money. They're going to win the contract, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. Have the maintenance. But we've specified exactly how we want from the top down, the election to roll. Mm-hmm. And that's why, to get everyone on the same page, that's why we're talking about a methodology instead of digging into because I mean, we could talk security and how we want to harden the OS. I can pop things up and I can show how I want the polling place to communicate with the precinct over a secure USA intranet that's in no way connected to the World Wide Web. It's exactly how we communicate in a secure manner now. Right? We could talk about all the details like that, but I think it's most efficient for us all to get at a high level and work down from there. And paper ballots. I was when I first came into this, I thought technology. I said I could secure anything, right? I can make an election secure all electronically. But really, my friends and the people that really helped me out a lot impressed me enough that these paper ballots are the gold standard. These are the source of everything else. When it all falls back, securing that and compartmentalizing that paper ballot within the polling place until we're absolutely sure of our results is 100%
right.
secure.
So no transporting them on enterprise rent-a-trucks or people's private cars. That kind of stuff. That would eliminate all of that. Once
the polling place agrees with the precinct, well, you can move them all to the precinct then. I wouldn't do them in rent-a-trucks. I'd hire Brinks. I mean, these are controlled documents.
Yes.
In secure spaces, they use a secure courier, right? Thing is a secure courier, right? Complete ability. I have this many ballot boxes being handed off, just like in a secure environment, right? Who touched it, at what time, and who they got it from, who carried it, and who they handed it off to. And everything to be in check on both ends, right? The same number of ballot boxes, the same number of ballots. Do the hand count at the precinct then if you want. Those same numbers, that same result has to agree with the polling place. Box all the precincts up together and move it to the county and have the county do it if they want. Again, it's efficient. As it keeps going up the hierarchy, it's going to take longer, again, to process. But once you have the polling place agreeing with the precinct, I mean, you're pretty much assured that your election results are known. Anything that happens after that is only going to identify a compromise somewhere between the precinct and everything upstream, right? Be completely obvious. And if you do catch that compromise, well, then you just come all the way back down to the polling place and you've got all the machines with all the images and 2 locations and all the encoding.
Okay, so how do we get this done? That's the question. How and should I put it back on the? Let's see. Are you going to do some more showing anything else, or should I put it?
I mean, that kind of gets the point. I'd like to do it with real machines, so it shows the real, but this shows the flow of it and where all the checks are and such. How do we done? It's the Secretary of State's.
Right.
They're the ones we got to present to. We got to come on board, let them see the advantage of a different method of voting, and to put the pressure on their vendors. Right. If grassroots is all demanding a more secure election, and this is methodology that we can all agree upon, implement. And we got to get this done before 2020. I mean, seriously, we're running out. I started this in 2016 after the election, talking to 1 million people and taking input from everywhere, and we got to get this done. I thought it'd be done by 2018.
So what we really need, we need candidates on board with this system, and we need all the election integrity activists and experts on board with it. So, I mean, you're inviting any challenges. Anybody wants to ask questions or say how
improvements. I mean, let's all work together. And, if there's places to improve it, more minds the better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just giving us a starting point and a methodology to talk to. Then we can work
these decisions about what voting systems they have in their state. But how would I guess you could present this at the twice a year meetings of the national. Yeah, that would be fantastic. So I mean, and also I think promoting it as a huge money saver has got to be something that will resonate with people. I mean, what are they making on the ES&S and Dominion? So.
Well, even if it was more expensive, if we can ensure the absolute integrity of the election,
mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the foundation. As soon as we get our elections fixed and we're absolutely assured that our representation is accurate, then our issues are going to be represented properly.
Right.
This is like the foundation for everything to come, right?
Yes.
We can take on all the big issues. Ocean acidification is huge.
I know. I find, I've been talking about this a lot for the last year, and I find, people's eyes kind of glaze over as you're talking about it. But it's so simple, and it's something that actually I heard Paul Thomas say. It was at the People's Convergence conference, and I sat in and listened to the election integrity panel, and he just said, look, all this other stuff everyone is here talking about is great, but we can't have any of it if we don't fix this. So, right. I mean, I think that's just...
Paul Thomas, he helped me with this. Ray Luck reviewed it. Jim Soper reviewed it. Michelle Vincent, she inspired me to take this on. I mean, it's just been so many people. She helped me to focus on things. I mean, even the people that were most critical of me, there's parts of their input in this too. I'm listening to anybody. I just fair election.
Right.
Once we have a fair election, I can be assured that those representatives that get elected are the choice of the people and their representatives.
Right.
I mean, it's all going to start by trusting the system, the election system.
Right, and I think right now, I mean, we're at an all-time low of the public's trust in the voting system. And I think also, from talking to candidates most of last year, most of them don't know. I mean, like I said, you can go on verifiedvoting.org and look up and see what kind of machines you have in your state. But, you really just we're all in the dark about it. So I think it's time for that to end and for people to really have that confidence when they go and vote, right?
Yeah, we'll get greater voter turnout. Once confidence is restored, get true representation. Because right now the turnout, it's easier to swing a smaller percentage of the population, right? And that's not going to represent us. We need to have absolute trust so that everybody knows when they go to vote, they're being represented. They are actually having a voice. Right now, if people don't trust the system and they decide not to vote, then a smaller number of people have greater influence over everything.
Right. But one thing, I've heard people say, oh, don't talk about this so much because you're discouraging people from voting. Don't talk about the lack of election integrity. But I think everyone needs to know what's really going on. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a laceration, right, you don't ignore it. No. You treat it.
Right.
You
exactly.
Triage the wound.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it's painful to deal with what we have to do.
Right. No, I mean, it's true. If we just talk about the problems and we don't fix it, sure, we're going to probably have even lower voter turnout because people don't feel like their vote counts. That's dangerous to our democracy. So
that, and I always find people want to know root cause. They're always looking backward and want to know the cause. But really, knowing root cause isn't moving us forward. It's just identifying what went wrong in the past. We need to just admit that there was a problem, there was an anomaly, there was a core crash, whatever, and here's how we want to move forward. And just all get on the same page and then just start pushing. And like I said, publicly owned, right? No one owns it. Everyone owns it.
Yes.
Right?
So that's another thing. And this is, I think, something I've read that's very, on partisan lines. Okay, so you hear on the right, they don't want this the election system to be part of critical infrastructure. I understand some of that after learning what I've learned about the partnerships between Department of Homeland Security and Dominion and ES&S, and it's all behind closed doors. So when I hear, a particular state, usually Republican, says we don't want to participate and hand over the power to the federal government, so there's that pushback, I guess, to not have it all be uniform and the same, right? But
Right.
if it's transparent and like this system, then it makes perfect sense to do that. It's when it's not transparent that
Right.
the
Again,
problem.
you don't want to displace your trust to somebody else.
Right.
You want to validate yourself, the interpretation of your own ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else is you trusting somebody else, and that's when we get into a problem. If they're behind closed doors to keep it, we want it to be critical infrastructure because it is, but we want it to be where we're not just releasing our ballot into the wind and trusting that someone in that matrix of infrastructure is going to count it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be absolutely assured that there is no way to tamper with this, and we want to do it in real time. We want it all on the table.
Mm-hmm.
No reason to hide this. We can vote, and all this can be in the open, and we can do this, but we just need everybody to get on board.
So let's talk a little bit about the history of all this. I mean, the whole moving to these electronic voting machines with their secret software that we can't know about. This all happened after 2000 election, right? And the hanging chads and all of that. So that was a disaster. So this was kind of like, this was supposed to be the solution. So we're talking about almost 20 years now of these machines. How do we expect ES&S and Dominion to want to build this system that's gonna probably not net them as much profit? I'm just trying to be realistic about what we're up against to get this done.
Well, are they a manufacturer of machines or are they a manufacturer of elections? I mean, right? Is the money manufacturing the election? Well, yeah, then they're going to be upset because we're taking that away from them and we're bringing it back where it belongs. But if they are a manufacturer of machines, well, great. Compete with the other manufacturers of machines, manufacture it better, build a better box, use the open source licensing to build in improvements, right? If you can build upon the specification and improve it for security, great. Then everyone's going to buy your box. And your money is going to be in the maintenance contracts. Right?
Okay.
The box itself should be a minimal profit. It's the cost of manufacturing and the cost of doing business, right? With a modest return. Right. But it's the maintenance contracts, that's the ongoing. That's where computing sees its money. So yeah, no, they're if they're manufacturers, manufacturer. We're making the specification. We're telling them you have to go to this specification, right? Because now if they can come up with a more secure way of doing it. But right now, they're not passing the red testing, right? Everyone has to certify their machines, like in California, like that various vendors, I won't say their names, have to get certified, and the red team testing finds anomalies, right? They have modems built in.
Well,
right?
The whole thing with the certifying, remember we talked about this on another live stream, but where EAC, they knew about the cellular modems, right? But yet they still certified these machines, and they said, well, we suggest that you don't have these here. So it was like this voluntary guidelines. Then what is the certification worth at all if you don't actually have to adhere to anything?
Nothing.
It means nothing.
You're going to certify the machines at an exact security standard, or you're not. It's not a guideline.
Right.
I mean, I feel like the Batman thing. I'm like,
yeah.
What's going on here? You can't have modems, and they're not even talking about what protocols were behind those modems. I mean, can I SSH into them? Is there a point-to-point protocol? What's going on here? I mean, modem, running TCP/IP on them, or what the hell is? No, the whole thing is ridiculous. Modems and any kind of remote access,
Mm-hmm.
memory cartridges, right, with firmware that can be manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
Having no LOVs, right? These voting machines don't come with a LOV, letter of volatility, right? In a secure environment, when a piece of material comes into that environment, it comes in with an LOV, a letter of volatility. I want to know on that machine every single place that something can be hidden, right?
Mm-hmm.
I can't have a virus traveling in on some POM only to be leaked later, right? So you have letters of volatility that say exactly where everything is stored, that it's not volatile. When you turn it off and you turn it back on, you don't lose it, right? If you turn it off and it goes away, no big deal. But if it's firmware, right, I want to know what's there, what I should expect to be there, how to check, and how to clear it. So things like that, standard security practices, right, that have to be applied. Hardening an OS, right? Oh, what degree the operating systems on the voting machines are hardened, right? That's not disclosed. Well, I want to know what's there and what's not. Everything should be right on the table, and the methodology should be such that even if you know everything about that machine, you can't beat it.
Right. Well, okay, so I actually shared this on Facebook. I don't know if it will reach anyone, but with the House committee, both the Republican side and the Committee on House Administration. That's it. So you've heard about HR 1? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I think that's great. It's fabulous that they're going to do things to try to fix gerrymandering and deal with voter suppression. But when you look at all this, and there's nothing in any of that about the voting machines and the lack of transparency, they're missing this huge, to me, from what I've seen, the main issue.
Well, that's why we have to help them, right? We have to bring things to their attention. There has to be a public consensus that expectations of voting. We expect it to be absolutely secure, 100% election integrity, absolutely hack-proof. And if somebody does some trusted insider, right? That's the greatest threat, is a trusted insider, right?
But how can we have this HR 1 with nothing about this in it? How? I just, it's mind-boggling. So,
well, they know they need something. They just don't know how to articulate what they need, right? They're grasping at straws, obviously. And we're handing them, like with this methodology, a top-down rehaul. What do you call that? A top-down approach to...
What do you mean, bottom up? No?
Well, I mean, it's like an umbrella, right? All the pieces fit underneath the top, but you have to start with a design, a concept to start with.
Okay.
One of them, they'll start at the bottom and they go, hey, we're going to secure this machine, right? This voting machine. But they don't talk about the infrastructure that machine works within, the tabulation, tabulating facilities, the security that goes on the machine. So
now I've heard that. So that a lot of if there's fraud, that would happen in the tabulation machines, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, as a hacker, you go for your biggest bang for the buck.
Right. That's right. It was in the Hacking Democracy movie.
Yeah, I wouldn't steal pennies, or $20 bills out of ATMs if they've got hundreds all piled up down at City Hall.
Right. Exactly.
You want the most bang for the buck.
I don't want to get too off topic, but I do want to mention a petition, and it's also on the Candidates with a Contract page. And this is about Broward County and Florida's 23rd District and Tim Canova's race. And I just want to be, I posted about this and said, I'm certainly not saying that he won or that the election results aren't accurate. But the thing is that we don't know. We have no way to verify it. And so anyway, that petition is up if you're interested in signing that, to get them to, and it was to the House committee, to get them to investigate. And I'm in that petition, the real effort is really to try to get this committee, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, to start looking at the voting machines and how that lack of transparency there. It really, I mean, you can fight all these other things, but if we don't deal with that, we're not fixing anything. So I kind of thought, well, maybe the Republicans on the committee, there are three now. One is Mark, somebody's from North Carolina, but I thought, well, maybe they'll pay attention to the petition just because it involves Democrats. Okay, it's Debbie Wasserman Schultz. So just because it's the opposite side, maybe they would pay attention to it. But I don't think we've gotten no response from anybody on the committee about it. But I thought it was interesting. I found something, Conservative Action Project. Conservatives oppose H.R. 1. This is just kind of ridiculous. The ultimate fantasy of the left. That means. But in here, it talked about H.R. 1 yanks election authority away from the states. Again, what I was saying, that's what you hear on that side. So H.R. 1 reasserts the ability of the federal government to micromanage state elections through a process known as pre-clearance. Anyway, they go on, but they don't say anything about the machines either. So it's like neither side, they're completely missing the whole point, seems to me. I mean,
they can't dictate from the federal level. It's the states. The states run their elections. That's the way it is. And the voting machine is just one component. I mean,
yeah, but it's a huge one. I mean, yeah. Well.
Yeah, but there's all sorts of infrastructure beyond the voting machine. Like in the 2016 election, the significant number of compromises were at the voting registration.
Right.
Affiliation flips, the causing of provisional ballots to be pushed out, where the shenanigans was taking place. It's too widespread to attack the machines, each individual machine. The logistics of that is hard. But now, like in LA, if you create a voting center and you start bringing things into a centralized location, or you have centralized counting facilities, those become the targets, right? So yeah, they're talking about machines, but really the machines are kind of way down on the threat process. It's everything that surrounds it, all the way from the registration systems, like you said, the gerrymandering and the.
Well, all of those are important, but I just feel like they're missing the mark, and it's just kind of mind-boggling. So I don't know how do we go forward? I think getting grassroots candidates on board and understanding this and pushing, putting that pressure on secretaries of state, getting the election integrity community. I mean, I've only been in this less than a year, and I know far less than they do. But, I see all of the hard work for a decade or more that they've done in trying to understand these machines, fighting things in court, get states to preserve ballot images. But why not take all of that energy and get everyone on the same page, if we can, on this system, and push with all that force on secretaries of state and get it changed.
We got to move forward. All the root cause analysis. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're looking at what went wrong, how it went wrong, what we have now, and
after the fact. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's just
our wheels. We're going to end up at 2020 with the exact same election infrastructure, and the same thing's going to happen. I mean,
and this stuff. I mean, yeah, you can change things by fighting it in court, but it's dragged out forever, and it just seems like I don't want to insult anyone that's worked so hard on this stuff, but it just seems to me as a new, outsider coming in that it's a lot of spinning your wheels, energy after the fact. Like, let's just say, get a different system in place and put the energy there. So, I don't know. I hope we can get more people on board. I know you already had, several experts that, helped you with this system, and I hope more of them will see this and, add whatever else they want to it and see if we can, start presenting. I think it's in July is the next one in, I think, New Mexico. The Secretary of State conference.
That's where we really need to draw awareness, but there has to be public pressure underneath it to get out to them.
There has to be. So if the grassroots candidates, or any candidates, doesn't matter, all of them should be on board with it. I mean, I would think no matter, what political side you're on or whatever, you want a fair election. So if the candidates can start talking about it also, then that gets gets people more excited about it. So we need to have, I don't know, mass movement, and I just thank you for all of your work you've done. Did you want to show anything else of a security thing, or I can't remember if you had another part?
No, I mean that's good. I just want to get everybody talking, throw the ideas out there. Let's all talk more about it and push this forward. And pressure on to fix the elections. We need election integrity, election reform. That's what we're trying to do, right? Everyone's been working really hard. Everyone recognizes we have a problem. We can go back and we can try to figure out where everything went wrong in the past, or we can just start looking forward and put our best foot forward. Pressure that it's going to make them build to a secure specification instead of handing us the same thing over and over again, another hole somewhere else.
And I think all that confusion of the technology, trying to understand it all, is what kind of makes people tune out, because it is confusing. I mean, so.
That's why it's a paper ballot. Easy,
right. So how quickly do you think this is possible? I mean, if you had the public pressure, do you think it's possible in a year and a half to get it done?
Oh, yeah. I think if we could build 2 demonstration stations and a server, maybe throw a markup machine, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. But if we can create a hard demonstratable experience, and then we just go on the road, we do a road show, and we just get in everybody's face and say, this is how it is, this is how it's secure. I mean, I'll go down to, we'll let the DEF CON people go wild.
Yeah. Right.
Expose it to everybody and prove out the concept that it's absolute. You cannot affect the election. Whatever the voter votes for, count it as cast. That's what Soper used to say, I think. It's a full thing. I want to know that my vote is counted exactly how I cast it. And the only way you can be assured of that is to validate that count, that interpretation from the bottom and move it forward.
It's ridiculous that we don't have receipts, that we can't go and look and see. I mean, we wouldn't accept that with anything else.
They worry about extortion. Now, if you knew your serial number of your ballot in your head, you could look it up online, right? I would hope that all the ballots would be publicly available on a big web page, right? So, and I would actually like to supply the tools to process those ballots online. So if some candidate felt like he was shortchanged, he could go through all the ballots with these tools all online and do his own summary.
I always wondered that. You worded it better than I could say it. But I always wondered that, yes, some way that other people could do to access the same information, do their own independent count. However,
and let them data mine. If a candidate lost, who did he lose to, and who were the other candidates that won on that, and what were their positions? Maybe what were the positions that won? It should be a whole array of tools to do data mining after the election, so that the politicians and the people trying to get elected can polish their game. If you had all that data at your access and saw who everyone was voting for and the combinations of things, so that you could pick up the issues and the things that were most important. These are good tools, and everything should be publicly available. It shouldn't be secret. It should all be out there.
Not at all. This business of the private meetings, I know I'm a broken record on that now, but I just still can't believe that exists. That this charter. Wait, let me read this part again. It's the secret meeting, and you can only be part of this, and you can only.
If you're a vendor.
Right.
Obscurity. It's so antiquated. These people, that's not how we do security anymore, right? We do security by compartmentalization and hierarchy of checks.
even if they're not doing any, even if it's all on the level, the fact that that exists that way means that they could rig it however they wanted. I mean,
I shouldn't have to trust anybody, right?
No, right. And when you have, I want to point out again, ES&S threatening to sue election integrity organizations, activists for just posting a manual of their machine online.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't want to seem suspicious, I mean, that sure does raise red flags for people. Like, why don't they want, okay, well, it's competition with another voting machine, but a company. But if we have it, as you say, all uniform, let them compete, build it to the specifications that you came up with. So we need public pressure. And I can't find my paper here. I was going to read this part about the DHS, but I've lost with my too many tabs open here. But yeah, it was like to be part of this charter, you had to be in the business of voting machine. Like it wasn't even open for like journalists to come in, I don't think, to cover any of what they were meeting about. That's just, highly suspicious to me. So, all right. Well, we need to get candidates talking about this and put pressure on individual secretaries of state across the country, and maybe go to these the conference in the summer.
Yeah, and just present. I mean, the methodology will sell itself.
Right.
All we do is just present it, because I mean it's introducing security at a level that isn't available today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think really emphasizing the money savings too, because that's got to be huge. I have some research to do on that, but I don't know. Do you know any numbers off the top of your head? What they what this is costing states when they replace their machines and they get the latest? I mean, what are we spending on that?
Yeah, just more of the same. No,
for what? For it's not more secure. So
no, exactly. Yeah, the numbers came up in the past. I don't recall.
Yeah, I'm going to do some digging into that. I'm also curious about some of the voting machine companies. You always follow the money and see like where are they donating to campaigns, or in the Hacking Democracy movie, which I finally watched. I highly recommend anybody if you haven't seen it. I think it's from 2006. But there was was it Dominion? I don't want to say the wrong name. Someone was donating to a Republican, candidate, or in the Republican Party in a particular state or something, and that not on the level there. So I'm curious.
Appearance, right? You want to avoid the appearance of.
But I'm curious what of that is going on now, still maybe. And I'm sure some people have dug into that, but it's something I'm going to start working on. But I mean, again, if we just have a machine that is what you said about $50,000 to build, do you want to talk a little bit about that? Or
I was trying to get a quote out of Clarion, and we were kind of hovering around $50,000 to build the 2 machines, the server, all the software, and prove it out. And that was with the hopper design, so that the ballot box is actually a hopper. So it would go from ballot box to ballot box during the hand count, trying to eliminate any touching of the physical ballots. Okay. But I was kind of pushing a fixed price contract, and they were kind of pushing hey, we'll just start building it and bill you along the way. So we were negotiating.
Okay.
Well, I think it was like 2 weeks ago was the last time I talked to them. I could talk to them some more. I think if we could just build a very small demonstration environment just to start showing people and just exposing it to public exposure and demonstrating that this thing is not hackable. You cannot alter the election if you just do it in this method.
Mm-hmm. So we also need independent media and big media, if we can get that, to start talking about this too. And everybody talking about it. Yeah. Okay. So anything else you want to wrap?
Thanks for having me and letting me discuss this. I think it's a very important issue. I really appreciate it.
I was joking in the beginning. I never thought I'd find this so exciting. But it is because I mean, like you said, we can have all these other great things that we want if we know we're voting, our vote counts. But
it's the foundation of democracy. It's
right.
where we start, is we got to
Mm-hmm.
fix the election right.
Right, exactly.
Make
Okay.
it fair. Then it doesn't matter who wins because it's fair and it will represent what people want.
Right, exactly. And then these crazy rules, like it's in my petition or CWAC's petition for Florida's 23rd district, when they have these crazy rules that they write to hide where the votes are coming from.
Oh my gosh! Yeah, that provisional column where they
Yes.
don't have. Oh my! And that's why because a lot of the anomalies with voter registration was around the distribution of provisional ballots, and I always wondered why would that be. And then you revealed
if you have just one provisional ballot, then all the columns are blank. Now
that's amazing.
How is that? You can't look at that and think of it as being designed as anything but to hide stuff. That's just really so. Yeah, this system would eliminate. There'd be no point in writing all those kinds of crazy rules because you could just track everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and we want everything to be online and available to data mine. Provide all the tools for data mining the information. We want to know who voted where and how, not who specifically.
Right. Well, that was one of the reasons they gave, that it was to protect the voter's identity, that you could see, like, for example, there was a voting machine for disabled or something, that somehow that rule was put in place to protect the identity, but it doesn't, I don't know.
No, we can protect the voter, and maintaining in the methodology, maintaining voter autonomy is absolutely critical. And that also helps to compartmentalize from the voter registration into the voting compartment itself, the marking the ballot and such. We definitely want to divide those two so there's no way to tie a ballot to a voter. Now, if the serial number on their ballot and memorizes it, and then they can look at it online and make sure that it's the same online at the state level as it was in the precinct or the polling place. Maybe have a reported anomaly, anonymous. Anyways, report a problem.
Gotcha.
Sorry, I'm getting tongue tied.
That's okay. That was a very good presentation. You did most of this yourself, so I just thank you for taking the time to explain it, and we'll just keep talking about it and hope we get. I think simplifying it makes people listen more too. It's really confusing. So this system, I think, is pretty clear. So hopefully that.
No, I want to thank everybody along the way. I've met, and I've been just so honored and privileged to have so many people that have helped me develop this. It's not me, it's everyone. And keep going. I want all the input that I can get. We want to make this good and then do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I really should have promoted that we were doing this more. We might have had more live questions, but that's okay. Maybe we'll do a follow-up and give people a chance to watch this and do a follow-up
I'll polish the presentation a little bit.
Okay. Hey, at least it didn't fall over like in the test run. No, I think that was pretty good. So maybe we'll do a follow up and get people to come on, and it would be great to have the election integrity clan, come on and ask questions.
Because then we could talk more security too. This is high level. We're just trying to keep it real simple with the high level. As we dig deeper, we're going to start talking about hardening and ways to protect what's going on and secure the transmissions. But I look forward to any time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. See you soon. Thank you.
Bless you.
All right.